Anyone from Korea or who is interested in Korean food has probably tried cooking while watching this person's video at least once. This is a story about today's protagonist, Baek Jong-won, Korea's best cooking expert and CEO of the franchise The Born Korea. Let's talk about the life story of Baek Jong-won, the CEO of The Born Korea, who said his dream since childhood was to become a big businessman. Jong-won loved food ever since he was young. On September 4, 1966, Jong-won was born as the third of two sons and two daughters in Yesan, South Cheongjeong Province, South Korea. His family were all gourmets, and they all valued eating. When eating out, Jong-won's parents let their children each choose what menu they wanted to eat. So, from a young age, he thought carefully before ordering food when choosing his menu. What should I eat? So even if his family went out together, they would eat separately at the preferred restaurant based on what they wanted to eat. Also, Jong-won's childhood dream was to farm mushrooms. Jong-won happened to go to a mushroom farm and was told that if you just water the trees, mushrooms will grow. At that time, Jong-won's grandparents ran an orchard. Jong-won knew how hard work was, so he said that when he grew up, he wanted to do some mushroom farming, which seemed easy, instead of the difficult orchard. He had an entrepreneurial spirit since childhood. When 11-year-old Jong-won went on a school field trip and his friends were playing, he did something else. At that time, the drinks his friends brought to the picnic, such as cola and milk, were bottled, and he thought he could make money by collecting these bottles and selling them. Jong-won rented a cart and went to a picnic. He collected 6 carts worth of empty bottles and sold them to a junk shop, and he donated the proceeds from this. In 1985, after graduating from high school, Jong-won got a part-time job selling used cars, touting customers after being introduced by his friend. However, even though he worked hard to bring in customers, the dealers were so poor that he could not sell the cars. Jong-won, who was frustrated, decided to try selling them himself. He memorizes used car information and welcomes his first customer, who sells him car in 40 minutes. After selling 6 cars over the next few days, Jong-won thought, being a used car dealer is my calling. But after a while, the second customer who bought the car came and slapped Jong-won. It turned out that the car Jong-won sold was a car whose mileage had been falsified. Jong-won realized that he needed to study cars in detail if he wanted to work well as the car dealer, but he wasn't very interested in the job and quit. Meanwhile, Jong-won had a conflict with his parents regarding his college admission. His father, who was his educator, wanted Jong-won to enter the Department of Education to become a teacher like him. Jong-won, who wanted to become a businessman, refused and eventually entered the Department of Social Welfare at Yonsei University. After entering college, Jong-won had no interest in studying. He was unable to concentrate on his studies and instead indulged in fishing. Then, in his first year of college, he loved beer so much, so he started working part-time at a beer bar. He thought, if I work at a beer bar, I can drink beer all the time for free. But there were no customers at the bar near the apartment. While Jong-won was struggling to increase his number of customers, he persuaded his boss to distribute promotional leaflets around the apartment. At that time, there was no chicken delivery, but when Jong-won distributed flyers, they received a lot of chicken orders, and sales increased by increasing the number of frying machines from 1 to 5. The joy of business was short-lived when the old owner tried to put his store up for sale because she was having a hard time with too many orders. When Jong-won was disappointed, the owner suggested that he take over the business. Jong-won had no money at the time and said he would only try to operate it first since he did not have money to take over right away. Although Jong-won was a student at the time, he earned quite a lot of money. He did quite well in the business by bringing his friends to work part-time. Jong-won made his money and expanded his store, becoming a man with assets worth around $1.1 million in 3 years, and also enjoyed doing business. Meanwhile, Jong-won's parents did not like him working in the business, and with his parents' persuasion, he joined the army in 1989. At that time, the government imposed restrictions on store business hours, and as the number of customers decreased, Jong-won decided to sell the store. Jong-won closed the store and bought stocks with the remaining money, but soon the stock price fell, and he lost all of his money. And just like that, Jong-won's wealthy life comes to an end, and a new change comes to Jong-won, who is serving in the military. The restaurant manager was having a hard time because the newly appointed military officer was very picky tastes. By chance, Jong-won helped out with the task and later took over the management of the restaurant. At that time, Jong-won learned various types of cooking, learning Chinese cuisine from a cook specializing in Chinese cuisine and Korean food from a cook specializing in Korean cuisine. When no one knew how to cook it, he went to famous restaurants and asked them to tell him how to cook it. When Jong-won asked for the recipe, saying that he was the one who cooked for the soldiers, the restaurant owner showed him the recipe that he would not share with the general public out of pity for the soldiers. Before being discharged from the military, Jong-won did not go on vacation or go out for a year, but he fell in love with cooking and happily prepared meals. He enjoyed the job, thinking about how to buy food ingredients and even setting up the food. In this way, as time goes by, Jong-won's relationship with his restaurant business grows. Excellent taste developed at a young age, entrepreneurial spirit, and even culinary experience. But despite this, Jong-won had no intention of entering society and running a restaurant. Since he was young, he wanted to wear a suit in an office and become a businessman who would run a big business such as construction or trading. So after Jong-won was discharged from the military, he set up the interior design office he wanted. Then one day, he was introduced to a restaurant for sale at a real estate estate he happened to visit. But Jong-won tried to turn it down, citing the high key money. In response, the property owner offered to reduce the key money by a lot, and Jong-won, who could not refuse, eventually took over the restaurant. In April 1994, Jong-won started Sumbap restaurant by chance. Jong-won thought that there was nothing left to sell with just the existing Sumbap menu, so he decided to sell pork belly as well. At the time, most restaurants got their meat sliced from a butcher, but Jong-won started buying whole pigs and cutting them up themselves to save on costs and sell them fresher. And while he was looking for cheap meat slicers, he bought a meat slicer for ham instead of pork by mistake. And when he put the pork into a meat slicer for ham, the meat came out rolled up and thin. Jong-won felt it would be a waste to throw it all away, so he began selling the meat to his customers at a low price. At this time, a customer looked at the dried meat and expressed dissatisfaction, saying, "What is this? It looks kind of like shavings." For your reference, the Korean word for shavings is daepae. Jong-won heard this and he decided on the menu name daepae samgyeopsal and sold it. The response was very good. Afterwards, Jong-won added his know-how to improve the taste of food sauces, diversify menu composition, and increase sales. However, Jong-won was unhappy. He was in his late 20s at the time. "I grew up in a middle-class family, graduated from a prestigious university, and served in the military. But restaurant customers always speak informally to me, and I even curse at drunk customers. And I always have to greet them politely. Do I have to do this while being treated like this?" Jong-won wanted to wear a nice suit and work in his office. Until then, he had never experienced failure or frustration. He never suffered a loss while running a restaurant, and he never suffered from a lack of money. As a result, he didn't worry much about whether he should continue to run the restaurant. He thought it was just a passing process in his youth, and that a restaurant was not what he would do in the future. In the end, because of those thoughts, Jong-won easily fell into a different path. So Jong-won took the money he earned from his restaurant and started a business importing construction lumber to make his dream come true. At that time, wooden houses were popular in Korea, and Jong-won's company grew to achieve annual sales of $3.7 million. As the material import business was doing well, Jong-won decided to build a wooden house complex, thinking that he should also start a construction business to build houses. Jong-won in his 30s, who seemed to be gradually realizing his dream of building such a large company, suddenly faces a major crisis. This is the 1998 IMF foreign exchange crisis. He had already signed a contract to build dozens of houses, so he had to import materials, but the exchange rate at the time more than doubled. So the cost of materials also increased significantly, leading to a deficit as construction progressed. Nevertheless, Jong-won built all the houses according to the contract, and in the end, he was left with a debt of $1.2 million. People left Jong-won, who became a debt collector, and his body and mind were broken, and he even thought about death. He left for Hong Kong, and while thinking about death, and when he saw a lot of delicious food, he thought, "Let's eat first and think." As he ate a variety of Hong Kong foods, various business ideas came to mind. After coming to his senses and returning to Korea, Jong-won liquidated all of his property, and with all the Sumbap restaurant left, he called his creditors to the restaurant, knelt down and saying, "If I sell this restaurant, I won't be able to repay all my debts. But if you don't sell this restaurant behind, I will definitely try to repay all my debts while running this restaurant." All his creditors recognized his sincerity and decided to give him another chance. In fact, Jong-won said that to his creditors, but he was also worried about when he would be able to repay his debt. It is said that Jong-won worked day and night as he focused in earnest on running the restaurant. He worked hard every day, from putting up restaurant flyers in his apartment and developing menus to observing customers and providing them with what they needed. As the restaurant's business continued to grow, Jong-won immediately took on a new challenge. Thanks to recommendations from people around me, I had the opportunity to open a new restaurant near the restaurant. At this time, Jong-won thought that since the economy was in difficult times due to the IMF, he should open a food stall restaurant that customers often visit. He opened a restaurant named Hanshin Pocha, which is a large, clean food stall restaurant with good food. Afterwards, he cut back on sleep and continued his life by working at a Sumbap restaurant during the day and a Hanshin Pocha at night. And As the indoor food stall became a huge success, the speed of debt repayment became fast enough to cover the interest in just 2 years. The restaurant business that started by chance became the opportunity to get Jong-won back on his feet. Since then, Jong-won has opened 20 restaurants, including happy snacks that utilize small spaces, bonja, which made beef smangoyap a popular menu item, seafood rice cake jim, which made tteokbokki with a variety of seafood to make it more luxurious, Samoli restaurant, which started the kimchi stew craze, and Paek's Coffee, a cafe specialty store. The above brand was created. Jong-won continued to grow his business, not only by running his own restaurant, but also by expanding it into a franchise business. Since he was young, he traveled around the country and abroad tasting various foods, studying theory through various cookbooks, and developing new menus and recipes as he gained practical experience. Jong-won always buys food unless there is something special to do. He has a management philosophy that says you should always think from the customer's perspective, not from a subjective perspective. Thanks to these days of hard work, he has now appeared in various media such as Home Cooking Teacher Bike, Alley Restaurant, and Street Food Fighter, food-related programs featuring his expertise causing a Baek Jong-won craze in Korea. Currently, he runs the franchise company The Born Korea, and appears on various broadcasts making efforts to make cooking easy and fun for beginners. In addition, Jong-won opened a YouTube channel in 2019 and is showing various aspects such as lectures on various cooking recipes and the Revive Local Market project. His channel is currently popular with over 5 million subscribers. It is worth paying attention to see what kind of great side Jong-won will show in the future and continue his new path. And I will end today's video with the hope that great businessmen like Jong-won will continue to emerge.